All right, I've got 5 o'clock. We have to adjourn by 6, so we'll get the meeting started. We have all board members present except for Bruce and Megan. And we will move on to communication items. Chanel.
All right. So I am going to start us off with our elementary principal's written report to begin with. And while I'm pulling this up, I will invite Lisa to come on up and she's going to give us an update on the playground. So if you want to just come sit over here, you can just talk me through the clicking of the screen in a second. So our elementary principal, and you'll see, I'm going to share this so that people can see that as well. They are up at the PBIS training, a positive behavior intervention supports training. If you remember, the elementary school is already a PBIS school, and the secondary, the middle school level is they have a team of people that is getting trained. So that's where our principals are today, which is, it's kind of abnormal that they're not here. So it feels weird to them as well, but they have a written update for you today. So so the first update from our elementary principal, construction, painting, and cleaning are progressing as planned. Thank you to all the Paynesville area school staff and workers for the dedication and hard work. They have been just busting their rumps to get things moving, and it's just been really, really helpful so that we can get the building ready for move-in. And so then they had to really take team, and you'll see a little bit of information in my some information from me a little bit later in the meeting as well. She's been holding her optional one-to-one meetings. Staff received an introduction and a welcome letter, and they've had an opportunity to schedule one-to-one times with Cassie, which is I think has been going very well. So she's been looking forward to that. Enrollment and class lists for the elementary this year, K-5 families learned about the homeroom teachers through the parent portal rather than on report cards last spring. Families received an introduction and welcome letter from her as well, inviting to meet and greet. Thank you to Ashley for assisting the kindergarten families and the new to district families with the parent portal. We learned that that's a process that we can do better in order to communicate with especially our kindergarten families, so that they know how to access information. So we'll work on that. Just a warm welcome. She's received a warm welcome and she's grateful for that. So, and looking forward to her time as a principal and committed to partnering with family, staff, and community to serve every student every day, while inspiring greatness. So that's from Cassie Akerson, our new elementary principal. At the same time, I invited Lisa Stang, preschool, our preschool guru, to talk through our early childhood playground equipment. So do you want to just kind of walk through what you have in mind here? Do you want me to, I'm going to do a quick present, and then I will be able to share it so that as you're talking, people can see what it is that we are talking about. All right.
Head to the first one. So I've been in the district 8 years, and ever since I've been here, one of the biggest needs my young families have come to me was they wish there was a playground suitable for their younger kids. So like before kindergarten age. So that's where I'm at. I'm ready to take this on and hopefully get to the point where we can get this for these young families of not only the preschool families and early childhood families of the school, but also in the community. So up to this point, we have combined forces with the, so when we decided to start this early childhood playground, we decided to join on with the committee that was already in place for updates to the existing elementary playground. So that's where we're getting to at this point. However, what we decided to do, because this was going to be such a big undertaking, was to separate them. So we'll be working with 2 different funds now. So one of them is the early childhood playground. The other one is continuing to provide updates to the existing elementary playground. We found that some donations that have been given in the year or 2 past were allocated for specific purposes, and we want to honor that. And I feel that if they were in the same, coming out of the same account, we wouldn't be able to really honor that. So moving forward, any fundraising events held by early childhood staff, myself, anyone, pretty much me, would be for the early childhood playground. For example, we have a big fall family fundraiser coming up the middle of October. All those funds will go for the playground. On the flip side, the playground committee, which has been in place for a few years now, they fundraise things like the color run. All that money that they raise will go towards the existing playground updates that have been in place for a while. So that's our estimated. I haven't gotten the exact numbers yet. That is without the port in place and the groundwork for the playground. So I'm guessing that's going to be a little higher than that. We're going to start seeking donations from local businesses, fundraisers, right and left. Everywhere you look, you're going to see a preschool fundraiser. Our goal is to 2 years out, hopefully, get this done, but I don't know. I've never taken on a big thing like this before, so I don't know if that's lofty or we're going to find out. However long it takes, we're going to get it done. So if you wanted a quick layout, these will be out the back preschool doors. So on the top right, you'll see 2 little boxes up there. One is my door and one is currently Ms. Kestelut's door. And then we have it that's the library door. And then it's going to wrap around to the front where the library windows are. That's where our swing bay will be. But otherwise, the next few slides just show a quick little, so that'll be our biggest playground set, a climber, all sensory wave, spring loaders, and we have that somewhere on our school grounds. Person to find it, you get a pat on the back. Because it was taken down off the playground. We had it on our playground. It was taken down when they moved the swings and it disappeared. And then a swing base.
One of the things that when Lisa approached me and was kind of talking with both Cassie and I about this project, is there is a lot of accessibility that is provided through a project and a playground like this. And that's something when, in my previous position, we built a playground that was accessible because of the student base that we served. And what we learned is how much the community appreciated the accessibility and being able to bring just their kiddos, maybe even just like grandkids that came to town, but it was sized, but there was also accessibility for individuals with disabilities. And so that was something that I appreciated hearing when we were talking through this as a concept. So
And that's why that 50 to 55 is going to be a little bit more because of that port in place. That's that kind of solid turf. It's easier for littles to walk on, easier for grandparents to walk on if they're watching their grandkids.
Have you got a specific playground that you're kind of modeling or ideas that you've gotten from any other communities or school districts or?
Yep. So my little 2-year-old and I have been on a playground tour this summer. Yeah. We've hit up some playgrounds and thinking about the inclusiveness of it and the things we'd like from each playground and what he's drawn to and what other kids are kind of doing on the playground has led me to that. We also have a sandbox that's currently in there, but it's really old and outdated. So we're just going to give that a fresh look to have a sandbox in there as well.
That's about accessibility to the public. Got some questions about the other playground.
Yep. So
It's not
just
accessible, so.
Yep, I just actually talked with Matt about that. If it's outside of school hours, it will be accessible to the community. There won't be pause kids in there. The preschoolers, obviously during the school day would have priority, but other than that, if it's non-school hours, it will be open to the community.
It's not fenced off and locked.
It will be fenced off, but it will not be locked.
Okay.
I think that would make parents and grandparents feel safer with that parking lot right there. They feel safe watching their kids knowing they don't have to chase them or things like that. So yeah, it will be fenced off.
any other questions? Otherwise, that's our elementary update for today. All right.
Thank you
Thanks so
very
much for coming. I appreciate it. I'm sure you can. All right. Next, we have our secondary principal update. So you will see, I will cast. I worked on putting in order today, so I have them one after the other. Let's try it out. Rats. Didn't do it. I didn't click the right tab. There we go. Let's try that again. Board update. It was the top one. Okay. So as I mentioned, the David is also up at the PBIS training. So again, the positive behavior intervention supports. So that really is, it's kind of the behavior side of the multi-tiered systems of support that we hear a lot for academics. And so it really encompasses teaching proactive skills so that you have a foundation for the kids before you assume they need interventions, okay? He is looking forward to that coming into grades 6 through 8 this fall. I think the timing of that is really nice because the kiddos who have been at the elementary are going to be familiar with some of the concepts and ideas, which will make implementation at the middle school pretty smooth. They're looking to fine-tune teacher and student schedules. We have ongoing openings at both the elementary and the secondary for paraprofessionals. So there are some interviews taking place next week. So still looking for candidates there. So if there are individuals who are interested, please fill out an application and there will be district-wide interviews. So they'll be teaming that together. Open house is August 31st. So again, 5 to 7 at the secondary, 5 to 7 at the elementary as well. Reminder for parents too that elementary are scheduled in 15-minute increments. And then the first day when secondary is in session on the 6th, the elementary students are not in session, but they also have those 15-minute conferences again. So at the open house at the secondary building though, we'll have the information and details coming up about the specifics that are going to be there, but I can tell you there's going to be food service, activities, some of the different events. Those will be, there will be tables and information at those sites on the 31st. The building cleaning is going well. Again, the custodial staff really did focus on the secondary building to begin with so that they could now, when they were able to access the elementary, get over and start hammering through and get those classrooms ready for teachers and kiddos coming up here at the end of the month. Beyond that, if there are any other questions, reach out to David. Again, excited to have kids and staff back in the building. It's been a quick summer, but we're ready. We're ready to have kiddos back. Next on the agenda, we have our activities director. So Rick, come on up. Welcome back. Welcome aboard. Your first official report. So
Yeah.
let's do it to it. Let's hear what you got.
Well, we're excited that school's starting up soon. With that, of course, comes the activities that come along with that. We have activities starting up on Monday, the 15th with football, girls and boys cross country and volleyball. And then our junior high sports will start on the first day of school with volleyball and football there too. Chris Wolfel will be coaching our cross country teams again this year. We're going to be in our first year as a co-op with BBE. So looking forward to that. Our head football coach is going to be Tim Patron, who's our new science teacher here as well. It's been fun getting to know Tim throughout the summer. And we're thrilled that Nicole Humbert has chosen to return as our head volleyball coach. And I know all of our coaches and athletes and our community is really excited to get practice going on Monday. And we have an activities meeting scheduled for Sunday night for anybody in grades 7 through 12 and all their families. If they want to come in and get some information about forms that they can fill out and expectations for the upcoming 2022-2023 school year from fall, winter, and spring. And they can pick up any of that information prior to Sunday in the high school office as well. Get those forms and physicals completed and fees paid for. And then I'd like to conclude with thanking Jen, Cassandra, Miranda, Amanda, and Carrie being so helpful with me with this new transition to my new position. Anytime I've gone to get any help from them for anything, they've just been really helpful and steering me in the right direction and awesome. So appreciate what they're doing.
Any questions for Rick? All right, thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, Matt, come on up. What's happening over in community ed?
Okay. So I'll give you an PAC report. Membership and usage has stayed very strong through the summer, even more so. We've been a lot busier even than in the past. We just had the fitness center, so new membership sales are still good. It's amazing how many events and activities we continue to book even through 2023 of just our own grad school goes in today doing baseball clinics and practice, and it's amazing. I'm like having to tell them, nope, we can't do this and can't do that. And it's like, wow, how do we, I mean, we make it work, but it's like, how did we do it before without even 4 extra courts that we have now? So, which is a good thing. We had a successful summer rec and enrichment program. It's kind of winding down a little bit now where most of our activities are done. Our fall brochure goes to the press this Thursday. It'll be mailed out next week. We have many new programs and activities. One I'm really excited about is we're now going to be for our community in the wood shop. So we're gonna have some open wood shop as well as open auto, open metals, innovation center, and then our beginning welding class again too. So our goal was really when we built that was to get the community in there, and our staff are embracing that and are the ones that are facilitating that. So kudos to our staff, especially for the transition over here this summer and some recent movements, and I mean they are just troopers. We ended up with 107 kids that we've had this summer that we're providing care for. We already have 59 registered for the school year. I anticipate we'll be up over probably close to 100 again once we get rolling there. Our Bulldog live stream, our first broadcast will be Melrose versus Paynesville football on September 2nd. They got good reception from our sponsors. The sponsorship filled up in about 3 days. So we have the most gold sponsors that we've ever had. So we're excited about that. They see the value in it. We have a good team there. That's all I have right now. Any questions for me?
I have a question. When you do have those competing like teams or tournaments coming in, how are you prioritizing? Do our like athletes get first dibs, or how are you doing
Yeah.
that?
Yep, absolutely. So what we kind of do is prioritize is like varsity level stuff first and our local, and then it kind of filters down there. So 7th and 8th grade, they want a tournament that would be a priority over community ed, and then kind of go into community ed. We haven't had as many outside requests yet. Sometimes they come early, and that's a balancing act because they'll kind of want to come and rent, and that does help the district too. But I don't want to hold, like last year we had quite a few from a group that booked them, but then they didn't go. So we ended up like, well, we can't do a youth thing that day. We can't do originally, which was kind of frustrating, but they haven't come with a bunch of dates this year already. So I feel like we've gotten with Rick and with our other programs, we've kind of gotten what we want, and that's going to fit. And then when they come, I think it'll fit around that. But if you come in the summer and you come through the year, we get a lot of comments to the community of like, man, you sure keep that place busy, you know, that, which is good because that's what we talked about when we built it. And there's people have been working a lot of hours in concessions, you know, Rick and Jake, and I think it's been benefiting their programs and benefiting the community. And it's holding up well. We're really blessed. Joseph Lang is our custodian down there. We thought we were going to originally need it full time, and he's working really hard. He works overnights, and we're doing that with a halftime person. Really trying to keep it good, and you know that we can be proud of it. So, yeah. Other questions?
Is pickleball still carrying on as
Yeah.
wild as before?
Yeah, it's amazing. I didn't know if we would lose a lot of our pickleball players in the regular morning one in the summer because they would play, you know, outside. But because a lot of these people come from other towns too to still play, and we've kept that core group. Now it's not as busy as our evening pickleball groups, but we have people playing pickleball all the time. So. Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, Jonah wasn't able to be here today, but his written report is primarily an update for 1 and 2 are kind of the technology updates of what's happening in each of the sites. there's not a lot of new implementation this year, and so that's kind of a nice, there's not a whole launch of fresh new, which is a good thing. Because that means that we're prepared and we're stable and now we're gonna be ready to roll in. He has most of the things ready at the secondary. He has to, when he is cleared to return to the elementary, all the technology will return to the elementary buildings as well. One of the things that's probably the most pertinent, and we maybe heard if people follow the legislature and what kind of the bills that were passed, there is a new student data privacy law that was put into effect this summer. So one of the biggest impacts for us is inventorying the digital applications and tools that students use, and then what data they collect on the students, and that has to be posted online for parents. Jonah's very well aware. He's been working with a team of people to make sure that we're all doing this in a consistent way and thinking about how we do it and how we communicate that information to parents. So that will absolutely be out within that 30 days from the start of the school year. So that's probably the biggest thing I wanted to just bring to the attention so that everybody knows that he is aware of that and on it, and we will be on par with that requirement.
So does that mean each parent or guardian would have access to their child's information? Is that what that is?
No.
Or is it a
No.
collective?
So this is a student data privacy. So like when we use Infinite Campus, what student data it stores. So it's about,
Okay, I see.
yes, so what we have to inventory is what are all of the things that we use that have student information in them, and then how it's used, and then how it's maintained. And then parents will get a communication of that.
Just, yeah.
Yep.
I was thinking the individual students, I'm like,
No,
okay, what?
it's as a district. No,
Okay.
as a district. Yep. Okay. All right, so
I
that's, go ahead.
I don't know if you might not have to answer this. I've heard students get their insurance on their Chromebooks. Are there options for families if they can't afford it, or is there?
Yes, there's a waiver process, and Jonah, yeah, perfect. Jonah takes care of that. Yep, absolutely. The next area is the buildings and grounds. So I've continued to work with our consultant. Our two leads have really been doing a nice job giving me kind of the rundown of the things that are questionable. I'm having conversations with some of our different providers that we've had established to find out how are these services being used? How are we getting them proactive? How are we making sure that, for example, our fire suppression systems, our UL, who is a provider for our heating system and our HVAC process, how are we making sure that those pieces are proactively ready for heating season, for example, and some of those kinds of questions. That's some of the work that I've been doing with our consultant, and Brad and Gary have really been doing a nice job of just the day-to-day things that are needing to be done. They're bringing me any questions that they have, and the questions that they bring me are solid. I mean, so things are really going well. I'm cautious, but I'm still analyzing what our feasibility is to use this as a cost-saving mechanism in the future. So I don't have a solid recommendation of eliminating that halftime position entirely, or I'm still feeling out the waters to see how things can function. But with our consultation time and Brad and Gary settling into their roles a little bit more, I think we're in a good place at the moment.
How is their team feeling about everything?
I don't think this is a great summer to kind of, I don't think it's a great summer to use that as a dauber check, because the whole apple cart was upset this summer because of the way we asked them to change the process. As I mentioned at one of our last meetings, I have brought them some different processes and systems, and gaining feedback, hearing what they like, don't like about those things. And it'll take some time to kind of settle into new routine. However, those change is hard, and it just takes a little bit of time to settle in and hear the feedback and make adjustments as necessary. Indoor air quality project, so super excited that we've got a date and a timeline, so I have this, I'm gonna, that one. That one, look at that, okay. So, I have communicated with our elementary staff that the 17th of, August is the date that we are opening up the building for elementary teachers to return back to school and start working on their classrooms. My recommendation to the board is to allow up to 8 hours of time for our elementary staff that they can either timesheet or in the calendar that was approved by the board. There were staff development and workshop days. The staff development committee has worked together to ensure that there are 2 days that are entirely workshop days. That was one of the requests of the staff, to make sure that they have some time that's purely classroom time. And I think that it would be advantageous to allow them to choose. They could either have the 8 hours paid, or they could choose to swap out one of the days in November. I believe it's November 11th, or January, which is, I believe, the 23rd of January, as essentially a swap date for the 8 hours that they would be allotted to come into their classrooms and get things situated. The custodians are going to be moving all of the stuff back to their classrooms, so they're not gonna have to go get it from the media center. If you saw the pictures of the media center at the beginning of the summer where everything was really stacked in there, the stuff will be back in the classrooms. The furniture will be returned essentially to where it was. If there's a change, they'll be able to communicate with custodians about what they would like different. But that's kind of my recommendation to the board is up to 8 hours of paid time for the staff to use. Some of them might choose to do evenings, some of them might choose to do weekends. Whatever works is just great. I do know that I've had a couple people ask me about community supports, if there's anybody who is interested in coming in and helping and supporting. And I would suggest that if there are any community groups like the Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, anyone that has volunteer hours, things like that, if they want to come in and help the teachers. There are some teachers who I think would love that. There's some that are, might say, I would prefer to just do it on my own. Either way is great. Ashley King, the admin assistant at the elementary, she would kind of field who would be interested on both sides of the coin. So if a staff member wants some support, they can let her know. And then she can pair them with anybody from the community who would have interest in providing any volunteering. So any questions or comments on my recommendation? Again, I think 8 hours seems logical and rational, with knowing that we can get in there on the 17th. There'll be people coming in and out, they're calibrating they're doing what they do with the units and making sure that they run in the way they're supposed to. However, they've been very accommodating to the fact that our staff are used to being in their classrooms throughout the summer. And it's, I think, important for them to know that we can get in a little bit sooner than we were hoping.
And the rooms will be clean too. They don't have to
Yes.
clean or anything.
No, they're
so
clean.
everything-
Yep. So that's, the custodians are in there right now, working and cleaning. Yep. Yep. Okay. Any other questions or comments before we move on to the next item? Okay. Administrative retreat. I just wanted to, sometimes I think it's important to know that just like teachers have expectations of professional development and things that they do, I think it's important to show and know what our administrative team are working on as well. So this summer, we have been working through the book, 5 Voices, how to communicate effectively with everyone you lead. It really is about understanding how you communicate and understand how you make decisions and communicate decisions around using your communication style. I'm not going to show the video, but I linked in the 5 voices so you can see right below, there is a short little video. These are the 5 communication styles, the communication voices. The majority of our population are nurturers. The smallest amount of our population are pioneers. And it's kind of interesting because each of those voices have loudness to softness and just ways in which you get your message across, in addition to how you hear other people. And I think as an administrative team, it's important for us to know ourselves so we can understand how we communicate. And that's some work that we did this summer. This little watch video click, if you click on that link, it's a 3-minute video that kind of walks through what all the voices are. On this website, there's a free assessment that anybody could take to find out how you communicate, how you like to have information come to you, and how you like to distribute information. So just wanted to share some of the work that our administrative team has been doing this summer. And I think, what we continue to, as we come together for our admin meetings, we continue to talk through how is it that you have used this information as you've worked through maybe various meetings or conversations, and I think it's been really helpful. So I just wanted to share that with the board as some of the work that our administrators have been doing as well. So the bulk of our time I really want to spend on the draft of the referendum presentation. So I linked in, and it was really important that it was very clear that document that was linked in here was drafted, because since I've sent that on Friday to today, I've made a number of changes based on feedback from administrators, based on feedback from, I've had conversations with Ellers, who does our financial advising. I've had just a multiple set of eyes on this to make sure that the information that's here is clear and concise. And then when the board is comfortable with this information, this can be used as our primary communication mechanism that is going to be shared out at various locations. So whether it's at community meetings, whether it's at a town hall live, whether it's bits and pieces that go into the newspaper, whether it's our back to school workshop, whether it's, all of these different places, this is kind of the common information. So I want to just walk through that with everybody today. So I'm going to share this. Actually, I'm going to present it, and then I'm going to share it over here. All right. Here, if there are things where you're looking at them and it feels like, okay, that's not very clear, that's really wordy, that's, this is really a good opportunity. This is a work session. It's a time for us to really have feedback on whether or not this is clear information, because I want to make sure that what the community knows is accurate, okay? So obviously, first and foremost is just background and date. So what is it that the decisions that the district is facing now that we've made the determination that we are going forward with an operating referendum? First and foremost, I think some of the things that the district has to look at, regardless of the outcome, is how do we respond to the deficit budget of approximately $416,000. So you will see that in 1920 and 2021, there is deficit budgets that were approved. Those have an asterisk because those two are finalized through the audit. The 21-22 is the revised budget, and then the 22-23 is the approved budget. So those are not finalized through the audit. But I think it's important to understand that and know that, because that really does impact how we move forward. The other piece of information that is going to be critical for the district to think about and understand and know is how do we start communicating the fact that in 23-24, we're going to be talking about a technology levy. The technology levy brings the district approximately $300,000 a year. So if that does not pass, we have an additional deficit of $300,000 per year. So I think when we're thinking about communicating with the public and communicating what it is that we are facing, it's important to know that that's another critical funding source that our district relies on. So why are we here? I think it's important for people to understand a little bit just about the basis of our funding. Schools are funded through federal, state, and local sources. The federal funds that we rely on are title funds, special education, food service. We had a significant amount of COVID funds that we were able to do a lot with. Some of that was obviously our indoor air quality project. That was a huge chunk of change that went into that project through our COVID money. That wouldn't have happened without without that funding. Some of the technology, I'll just point out the system that we're looking at right now, when everything went to virtual, some of these things were purchased with funding, that federal funding through the COVID funds. So I think it's just important to understand that there were an onslaught of funds that will not be ongoing and continuing, okay? Our state funding, we're gonna talk a little bit about the Minnesota legislature and how they set their budget, and they set their budget for 2 years. Over the past 2 years, schools received 2.45% in the first year and 2% in the second year. So what that means is that it goes into a formula, okay? And that doesn't mean that you just get like 2.445% of your budget. It just means of your per pupil count, you get 2.45% on a formula. So we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, because as we come into the legislative year, we're going to start hear legislators talking about the school budget and what that means for us from a legislative perspective. Paynesville, we do have our QComp program, which is funding that comes directly from the state to help support some of the professional development and our certified staff. And then our compensatory revenue comes directly from the state as well. So I think when we've talked a lot about our free and reduced forms and our compensatory revenue, it's important for our public to understand and remember that that's state funding that comes into the district. And then we have our local sources. We have our taxpayer, the money that comes from our levies. We have fees that are paid by students. And then like if we have facility leasing or things like that, that's other revenue that comes into the school district and is categorized as a local source. So go ahead.
Okay, sorry. So these are some things that I've been thinking, and again, I know I'm a person who likes a lot of information. Not
Yep.
everybody necessarily does.
Yep.
But I think there's a lot of terms in here.
Okay.
As you're explaining it, it makes sense, I think, to people, but there's probably terms that people are like, I have no idea what that is.
Okay.
So would there be a place where you could hover over and there's a greater definition of it, or it brings you to the state statute? Again, I don't know that all people will look at that, but some people potentially would.
Yep.
And in the top part by the budget or the deficit budgets, do we want to talk about our fund balance and what the state statute is and what ours is and what that means? Or is that way too in the weeds? But that people know, like, we have an obligation based off of what our current policy is.
Right. And I think that's a good question. I think it's a good question, Maggie, and where do you feel, what are you hearing from the community members around why? Because I wanted to start to answer the question, why are we here? Because I think that's one of the questions that comes up is, so why are we in a deficit budget? Why is it that we don't have the funding? And I think that it's important to know that we just can't continue the course that we're on. So I really like the idea of adding like highlights to terms. So board members and community members that are watching too, if there are terms that don't make sense, I can absolutely do a hover definition, link it somewhere. I think that's a great idea, because I'm trying to keep it high enough level so that people can look at it, right? And they can dig deeper if they want to, but they don't have to read it all and have it all in if it's.
They should be reading it now.
Right.
They can opt to read them out.
They can
So choose.
Okay, so maybe if you all are taking a look at that and you see terms where you're like, yes, I know what this means now because I was on the board, but before I was on the board, I would have not known, please let me know, okay? So then we're gonna move into the general ed. So when we think again, why are we here? So our state funding is a good portion of the money that we receive that goes right into our general fund. And this chart shows the rate of funding The bottom orange line is the dashed line of what funding truly is from the Minnesota legislature. The blue line at the top shows if it would have kept up with inflation, what the dollar amount would be, okay? And I think that's important just so that there's a visual, the visual gap, it's there and it's very real that the funding that a school district receives does not align with inflation and costs. And that's part of why a school district relies so heavily on referendums and operating levies, okay?
Sorry.
Yep.
I think this chart is critical. When I've shown this chart to other people prior to our current economy, this resonated a lot. And I think as people are going, yeah, we're dealing with lots of inflation issues right now. Like, look back, we've been dealing with this for a long time.
Yeah.
Like, this isn't due to our current economy. This
Right.
is due to lack of
Right.
commitment to fund our schools properly.
Right.
At a state and federal level.
Yeah.
Our last referendum passed in 2012, whatever, Ben, and
And it was still a gap,
it was-
right?
That's, that gap has been increasing just a couple of years ahead of that.
And I do have this, I bring this back in another place, which is one of the changes I made, because I think it's important to bring that point home. Another reason why we're here, is 77% of our general fund is, personnel. I think it's important to remember that we have 5 bargaining units throughout the school district. Those keep us competitive. They keep us, regionally, in a place where we can attract and maintain and retain staff. If you look at our salaries and benefits in comparison to Maple Grove, it doesn't match, but it shouldn't have to either. We are regionally competitive. And so our bargaining agreements really do drive a lot of the work that goes into the budget. And when you look at what comes in from a revenue perspective, they just don't align and there's a mismatch, okay? Another thing that just is really important to remember is we are funded per pupil, and that per pupil formula, if we have more kids, the formula means we get more money. If we have less kids, it means we get less money. So unfortunately, our enrollment has been fluctuating on the downward trend. So let's take a quick peek at that. If you look at from 2011 to 2021, we are down 98 students. So, and that difference in 98 kids, if we used our last year's funding of 6,863 kids, or this year's, it's $672,000. And that would be, so that's a lot of money when you look at a decline in enrollment.
Sorry, one more point on that. This is something that is very real, and it's not because of our district. The population, I think don't quote me on this, it's like something like 2025, we're gonna have the lowest amount of 18-year-olds that we've ever had, or something like that. I mean, from a higher ed perspective, we look at that 18-year-old number. We are having just less people being born.
Yeah.
And so we have to think about our budget 5, 10, 15 years from now on how we're going to operate with what we look at statistically declining enrollment.
Right.
Because of population.
Yep.
Now, things can change and shift, but it is a real concern, and we are not the only school who's been facing this as a huge challenge.
So to the point that this isn't unique, so the next slide that we have is our open enrollment data. I think that's important because what this slide shows is cumulatively, we gain more students than we lose. Okay, and I think that says a lot for the Paynesville Area School District because we are in the net gain of 15 kids, okay? So when you look at a net gain of 15 kids, I think I've got it on my, in my notes. Yeah, so if we have across the board, we've not lost kids and lost from a net perspective. And if anybody ever wants to look at, these are all linked, so people can click on the link at the bottom and it'll bring you to where I got the data, okay? So then why that's so important is to in keeping track of, again, if student enrollment is equivalent to general ed revenue, when you look at the ADMs or the, so our current per pupil unit is $6,863. If you use the 908 students that we had last year, and we would have received the $8,126 that is on this trajectory right here, that would have been over $1 million difference for our school district. Okay, that's part of why we are so reliant on asking the public to increase the capacity to fund our school through a levy. Whoops, I'm on the wrong screen. Here we go. So the quick snapshot of how do we compare to everybody else, because I think this is also a big question that is often asked. So, I really debated whether to include this and how to include this because it's so confusing. When in 2012, the operating referendum that was approved was not $39.25. Throughout the course of the last 10 years, the Minnesota legislature has changed the option that school boards have so that you have that current local optional revenue, which is a consistent $724 that was part of the voter approved back in the day. Okay, so all school districts, though, this is across the state of Minnesota. This is not unique to Paynesville. So when you look at what is remaining of that levy was $39.25. So that's all that's remaining of the voter approved operating referendum. Okay, so if you look at the current average, and this is across the state, the current average for the operating referendum is $716.74 per pupil. So then when you put the operating referendum and the local optional revenue together, that would be an average of $1,590.69. So if you take these two numbers and add them together, that's what across the state, that's our average. Okay, we're not there, and we're not asking for that. What we're asking for would be approximately $1,100 combined over the two. So let me go to the next slide, and I'm going to show you what that means for our neighbors. Okay, this is oftentimes the question that we're asked: how do we compare to our neighbors? Because that's who we compete with for students when you think about it. So the line across with the clear star is the average per pupil amount amongst these districts, which is $510.50. That's a voter approved levy. Okay. The green star is what we're asking for. So it's slightly below the average. And you can see, even if we brought that up to that approximate average range, we're still much further below our neighbors. I think it's also important that you all know, I do know Eden Valley is also going for an operating referendum this fall. So it's important to know that we're not alone in this conversation. Okay. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep just kind of this is the 3 questions on the ballot. This is going to have the inflationary index. I want to be clear, in one of the last newspaper articles, I did see that it said that our referendum was linked to inflation. It is not. There is 2 questions that are going to be posed. So the first question is, can we authorize a levy? And the second, and the only way that can go is if number 1 is a yes, can it be indexed for inflation? So in our presentations in the community, it's going to be important for people to know, what does that mean? Here is the 10-year history of the final inflation index. Okay. People will say, yeah, fine, that's great. But you know what's happening with inflation. What does that mean for today? So then we're going to look forward onto these charts. So if you look at this year, yeah, this year was high at 7.17. But then as you look to the future, it continues to come down. You would see that in 2025 is the first year that it would apply to our $460. Okay. So I anticipated the question of, well, that's great, but then what does that mean if it's $460? What does that go up to? So then we're going to take a look at this one. So in 2025, at a 1.66%, that would go up to $467.64. That's what it means to be indexed, okay? I think it's important, a couple of pieces when we're giving these presentations or having these conversations is for people to see that there is a cap that now, and we are nowhere near that cap. We are well below. However, it's important for people to see that there is a reset, in my opinion. It's important for people to see there's a reset from that high inflationary anomaly. And to remind people that this is set every July. Okay, so, and that's why you'll see in the previous two slides where I have, this is the final one. That's, you make a projection and then obviously after the year is done, you knew exactly what it was, okay? So this is also a really key document because I know that people just want to know, what does this mean for me? And what does this cost? So this is going to be a very familiar slide and you'll see the $175,000 home costs approximately $10 a month when it's all said and done. Okay. Reminding them that if you have a farm, a large piece of property, it is the 1 acre of land and the homestead and the garage. Okay. So what we need is we need people to get out and vote. And the reason why is you guys have seen this chart before. We are in the green year. So that means that if you look at where the green dots are, we are getting up to more voters and we need people to know what they're voting about. So we need people to get out and vote, but we also need them to know what they're voting about. Okay. And we need them to ask questions. So this will have a hyperlink so that they can click on it on the email and it can send an email. It'll be they can click on this page and Matt's going to be developing a website for us for our referendum page. So they'll be able to click on that and get a landing spot there. But if people have questions, the likelihood is somebody else has the same question. Ask the question and get the answers, right? Because what have we done so far? These are the things that have already taken place. We've done, and I'll put, I've had a couple of people say, do we want to put dollar amounts there? Don't we want to put dollar amounts there? I can go either way, kind of based on what sometimes people want more, sometimes people want less. We can talk about that. But then I think this is probably the bigger thing that people are wondering is, so what if it doesn't pass? So then these I think are areas for consideration and discussion. And none of these have been vetted as these are what it is, but these are the things that people have to talk about. And when I reach out and say, what did you do during times of budget deficit? These are the areas and the items that are there for discussion. So activities fees. We've had a lot of discussion about that. I think it's important to notice though and understand only 3% of our operating budget is activities and athletics. That's not going to make up we're not going to have a huge gain there if we increase fees or if we reduce program. Decreasing elective offerings, elimination of the block schedule, larger class sizes by reducing staff to have instead of a 3-section school being 2.5, reducing a dean of students, restructuring the buildings and grounds, as I mentioned earlier, is that could be a possibility. Maybe it's increasing walking distance, maybe it's charging for activity passes. We are going to be inviting staff in to discuss what in the first couple of months of school, where do you see as viable options to look at reductions? I think if there are individuals who are, maybe those become discussions of early retirement and early retirements and not refilling. How can we do that? What can that look like? These are the hard pieces. And I know the board has really had kind of I don't know if we want to I don't want this to feel like an ultimatum, but it's also, we have to be clear. We can't continue on the path that we're continuing on. And then what do we do with that? Yeah.
One statistic I think would be important, because I've already heard this before, is that,
Okay.
well, we can make the budget cuts by just eliminating extra periods. And if we have a statistic that says our budget is actually only
3%.
X amount, maybe you already had that up there.
Yep.
But, okay, so, there it is at the top. I was looking at the other ones. But that's one to emphasize, because plus the 150 kids will lose.
Yeah.
Right. That's not a simple answer.
It's not a big bang for your buck decision. Yeah.
But some people out there don't understand it. They
Sure.
just, oh, well, that's easy. We just get rid of all that.
Yep. Okay, so what are we gonna do with this information? I have reached out, I did not. Miranda reached out, to Sportsman's Den, the Green Roof Center and Queen Bees to have an informational session. She'll be creating, publications to get out there and I'll add information about like questionable terms. If there are things that you feel like this is not clear, please let me know. Because then I think what's really important is that if people go to the Sportsman's Den and they go to Queen Bees, they hear the same information. And I think that's really important. So I want to make sure that the information that we start with is really clear, and it's concise and it's informative.
And I'd recommend doing some sort of Facebook Live or something, so it
Yeah.
also can be recorded, then that way people can go back and look, where there's a lot of people who won't be able to make those days.
And I think what I intend to do for the Facebook Lives is keep them shorter segments, because if I did this in a half-hour presentation, nobody would watch it. If I'm gonna be real and honest,
It's a
they're not,
recorded conversation, yeah, never.
they're not, so if I do little sound bites of information, that'll be helpful. So watching the clock and knowing that we have just a couple minutes left, are there any other areas that you want me to add or hit on? Or maybe you want to just process this a little bit and email me if there's things that you would like to see differently. But again, I've really worked to ask people who have been through this before, who have had successful referendums, who have had failed referendums, had multiple sets of eyes to make sure our data is clean, clear, and understandable. So that was the intent.
One thing you could do is gather like a smaller group, like for a test, to see what questions they would have, so then you could adjust it for the Sportsman's Den, like maybe have some teachers or staff or parents, like, would you just come in and react to this and respond?
Yeah, I like that.
The gaps are.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm a processor, so I'll probably do it in like a day or so.
Yep.
And just, but I do like some of your suggestions there, Maggie. It's having some type of hovering ability over some of the terms, it makes it really nice, just it's simple and easy, because not sitting on the board, I wouldn't know.
Mhm.
That's that side 3 or whatever it was.
Okay,
It's kind of some of the key areas, but
sounds good.
with 2 to 2.5 minutes left, is there any other conversation or topics you want to bring up for future meetings?
Before we adjourn, I do want to just honor and recognize Megan. She will not be on the board after the end of the month. So I want to thank her for her time publicly and say best wishes to her and her family. But just wanted to take a second to acknowledge and thank Megan for her time on the board.
Very much so. All right, we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you very much, everybody.